I'm reading this book now and it's about what God's dream for you is. And one of the things, like, are you, like, I have these experiences that I've had with working and quitting my job. And for a long time, I didn't want to talk about it because I don't like a lot of attention on myself in that way, or I feel like I'm bragging, like, oh, it must be nice. You get to be at home with your kids. But now I'm more talking about it to be like, you can do this too.
Right.
I've done this. I can help you. I can help you budget. I can talk to you about, the risks.
This episode is sponsored by Southern Utah Safe and Vault. It's one-stop shop, buy, education, delivery, everything you need with the safe or a vault door. Website is safesfirst.com. Their showroom is 1397 West, Sunset Boulevard, number 115 in St. George, Utah. Phone number is 435-767-7878. Hey guys, welcome back to the Derek Lake Podcast. We are episode 106. I've got a special guest on today. She's actually my real estate coach for the real estate investing school. Brody, we're actually going to have Brody on here hopefully soon. I need to get with him and nail down a date, but I did talk to him and he's going to come on. And we're going to talk a little bit of real estate, which right now it's like I'm 2 feet in on all of it. So hopefully you guys will get something out of this. I know you will. We're going to talk a couple deals. We're going to talk like practical things, not just the Instagram, buy a house and be a millionaire, right? So we're actually going to talk about the nuts and bolts and how it all starts and how you can do it not traditionally on Zillow, which is going to be extremely helpful for me because that's usually how I find stuff right now. So anyway, we'll jump in. This is Emily Fackler. Emily, how are you?
I'm doing great. I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, we're going to do this over Zoom. And personally, I don't love Zoom because I was explaining to Emily, like you guys are all seeing me out of a camera where I'm facing you. And then she's on a TV to my left. So like if I turn, she's here. So bear with me if it flashes to me and I'm looking the wrong way. But anyway, I appreciate you taking some time out. I know you're busy. I know you've got kids and we're in the middle of summer. And what is the weather over there? So tell me where you're at and then tell me a little bit about your area. And I'm curious what the weather is because we're like 112 here.
Yeah. So I'm in Eddyville, Kentucky. It is about an hour and a half from Nashville, 2 hours and 45 minutes from Louisville, which was where I lived for 13 years and met my husband and started my family there. It is hot here. It's in the 90s, but we have terrible humidity. So where you're like, you've got that heat, but we've just got humidity where you just walk outside and you just sweat. So we're really hot as well.
Yeah, we're starting to get those like late afternoon showers that start to push in. And then it's not humidity like the South or anyone else, but like you start to get it and you definitely feel it if you're outside. And then it's all of a sudden you're just like wet.
It's nice in the evenings though. Like I'll end up putting a sweatshirt on if we sit out. So it's not too bad.
Oh, dang. Yeah, that ain't here. You're still sweating in the evening. That's like, it gets down to, I don't know, I'd say like mid to high 80s at night. And that might even be wrong. It may even be hotter than that. I don't know. Anyway, it's hot here. You just people say, well, dude, it's too hot to live in St. George. And I'm like, you just kind of get used to being hot. Like you don't get used to the heat. You just get used to being hot. I mean, I've lived here since I was 7, so I love it.
It's such a cool area. You got to put up with the heat. There's so much to do.
Going back to having you on Zoom instead of live in studio, I should have, if I was smart and planned better, I would have lined this up when you were in town and then we could have had you in studio. I was thinking that too.
We should have just knocked it out.
Yeah. But you were busy. The cash flow conference that I went to, that's actually the first time that we met in person and we just hit it off really well. It seems like our personalities click really well. And there was a dinner after and I thought, gosh, we should have lined this up to get you on. But anyway, we can get started. Let's kind of jump in. I want to, and I'll kind of let you tell me how, your story, and I know some of it, but I'll just kind of guide us through it. Um, I also want to talk about, so don't let me forget, I want to end this on a subject of how people can get out of the runaround, the rat race, the 9 to 5, and
Yep,
just some options, right?
absolutely.
So I'll kind of let you take over. You lived in Louisville,
Yeah, you
right?
got it.
Louisville. And why did you leave there? I know you had a career, um, and then kind of getting into real estate. How'd all that happen? I'll let you take over.
Yeah, so I'll even go before that, just to kind of
Okay.
give a background of why I live where I live now. But grew up in a really small town where I live now. There are about 3,000 people here. And I'm one of the people that were just like, get me out of here. I've got to leave here. It's too small. I need to see the world. Went to school, Bowling Green, Kentucky at Western University. And then there I was like, okay, I need to go to a bigger city now. So went to Louisville, got a job there, met my husband, started a family, and I was working at a big corporation in sales, and I loved it. I love sales. I love climbing the ladder. I'm a competitive person, always have been involved in sports. I'm very driven, and I'm kind of an executor. So I'll give an example. Like I still have my mom's voice in my head where she's like, okay, you're gonna graduate high school, you're gonna go to college, and then you're, because no one in our family did, and then you're gonna graduate college and you're gonna get a job, and you don't need a man to do anything, and you can do this all on your own. I want you to be able to stand on your own. And I kind of just had that in my mind, and I just did it. Not that it was easy, it was hard. I was an idiot in college, partying, being crazy. Still don't know how I'm alive to this day, to be honest. And that's just kind of how I am. I'm like an executor. So then when I went to, fast forward, and I'm at my corporate job, that was just my thing. Like, all right, I got to get the next job. I got to get the next job, next job. And I had a goal. I actually left that job when I was 33. And I had a goal. I was like, okay, I'm going to be a VP by 40. I had another woman that I was kind of looking up to, and she had told me that. And I was like, man, that's a good goal. I'm going to do that. And it got to the point where two of my kids were having issues at school, and I couldn't help them because I wasn't home. And one of my children I was getting called to come pick them up frequently. And I kept, like, every year I'd tell my husband and say, like, we just can't keep doing this. I need to be the CEO of our family. I need to run our family. Like, it's just craziness. Like, laundry wasn't getting done, no cooking. We were fighting over who got called when one of our kids were sick, or worried we were going to lose our job. Most families deal with this when both parents work. We both had high stress jobs and important jobs to both of us. We're both bringing in about the same amount of money. We used to play a game called Who Can Make More Money a Year, which we kind of still try to play, but just highly competitive jobs, and kind of had those golden handcuffs where you feel like stuck and you can't leave. So that's kind of where I was in Louisville. And then the kind of turning point there was I just couldn't take it anymore. I wasn't with my kids. I was stressed. I was that weekend warrior that I see a ton of my friends doing, where you don't even talk to them on the weekends because that's their only time to relax, and they don't have time for anything else. That's how we were. And started learning about real estate. I was listening to podcasts, reading books for about, I would say it was almost 2 years until we bought our first property. And then after that happened, we kind of made the decision of like, okay, we need to figure out how I can leave my job.
What podcasts, what books? Did you have anything? Sorry, I'm looking
Oh
at you again.
gosh, all
Uh,
the things.
I mean, was there
Uh,
a specific one that just hit you, like as you were reading it? Is there something that you suggest all the time to people?
yeah. So of course, this is, everybody says it, but Rich Dad Poor Dad was the book of, okay, that opened my eyes to, I'm going to sit here and make money for someone else for the rest of my life and just be this little part of that organizational chart and work my butt off and spend all this time working on someone else's dream, and for what? And it just kind of gave me that different point of view that there's another way to do it. I also started listening to like entrepreneurial type podcasts. So I was listening to Business Wars, which just gets my mind going on different ways to make money and the hustle part of those sort of things. So kind of learning what other people were doing. How I built this was one of them, where I started listening how different entrepreneurs started their journey and how they did that. And then the second book after Rich Dad Poor Dad was the Cash Flow Quadrants. That really opens your mind to see like where your money's going and how it could be better used, and how you can work less hours and make more during those hours. Also read the 4 Hour Work Week. That one's a really great one. And then I really loved David Green's Burr book because it taught me about compound interest and how you can keep using the same dollar over and over again. Those are like my big ones on that subject.
Awesome. Yeah, Rich Dad Poor Dad was for me too. I've got kind of I consider him a mentor. I don't know if he considers himself my mentor, but I've got a guy, he's been on the podcast. I've talked to him a handful of times. He's an investor, real estate investor. And he's the one that told me, I said, what, knowing where I'm at in my life now and what I'm trying to accomplish, what do you suggest as far as books, podcasts, whatever? And he said, Cash Flow Quadrant. And I was like, what's that? And he was like, you've read Rich Dad Poor Dad. And I'm like, yeah, like 10 years ago. And
Yeah.
he's like, okay, read Rich Dad Poor Dad again. And then I want you to do Cash Flow Quadrant twice. And I'm not a huge reader, but I love listening to books.
Yeah.
And so actually we bought that California property that I've talked about on here and you know about. And I ended up having to do a lot of the rehab myself, and it's a 5-hour drive. And so like the first trip down and back, I'd listened to Cash Flow Quadrant all the way. And so like I just hammered out both those books, I think like, I was going to say 4, but probably 3 times each on those trips down there and back. And so like I really just hammered it home for me. And yeah, I've actually done a little bit of speaking now, and that's something I hit on with the Cash Flow Quadrant is I've always been, like self-employed, and I thought I was a business owner. And so it was kind of it separated those two for me and told me the steps I needed to do to get into being a business owner. Right. And so anyone that's listening to this and you want to even just better yourself, even in your own, if you're working for someone, some of those books can still help you do that just to be a better person, to be more efficient. But definitely if you're getting into real estate or even your own business, both of those I think are a must. Awesome. So when you told me, how many properties you have and you're doing that, like I knew you were obviously in it and you were doing it, but I didn't know you had that many. So can you talk about, maybe just tell me what you have again, maybe break down if there's anything that you feel like you need to talk more about, and then we'll dive into a couple of them.
Okay, sure. Yeah, so our current portfolio is we have 2 mobile home parks and 1 hotel that has 10 doors, but it also has a living quarters and an office, and we've converted that to long-term. So every person in there has a 6-month or 12-month lease. We also have 3 duplexes, and I'm trying to think because we sold some things. And then I have 1 Airbnb that's just a single family. I did a few flips. So we did 3 flips before, did 1 wholesale deal, which now is illegal in Kentucky. So can't do that anymore without having a license. Yeah, I think that's it.
And then, so on the Real Estate Investing School podcast with Brody, you guys talked about one of the mobile home parks. So I would like to talk about something else if we can, like a different deal.
Yeah.
And is that your most recent one?
My most recent property that we bought was in December, and that was our Airbnb.
Okay. Is there a property one more than another that you think maybe we could pull some lessons out? Maybe there were some struggles we can talk, and then hopefully some triumphs.
I can talk about the hotel because I'm really in the messy middle of that.
Okay.
Like it's not a success story yet. Maybe some people think that it is, but that's really something that I want real estate investors or people starting out to know is it takes a couple of years to do. And then I can kind of talk about how I've wanted to just sell it. I've even said that to my property manager, like, let's just sell it.
Well,
because it is very tough in that first couple of years when you take on a value add property.
yeah, and I mean, even in our situation with Amanda and I in this property in California, I swear it's a weekly thing. I think about punting on it. So I feel
Yeah.
the same thing.
Get rid of it.
But yeah, I'll let you just kind of dive in. How did you,
Okay.
is it one of those kind of how you found it and move forward like that?
Yeah. Yeah. I'll
Awesome.
talk about how I found it. So I invest in my backyard. I like, it's not just about like being comfortable. I would definitely buy something out of state. I've made offers on things. Haven't really been aggressive in like going after things out of state, but there aren't a ton of investors here. And so I like doing things in my backyard because I'm going to offer either jobs to people here or a place to live, which we are in desperate need of rentals here. So that's one of the reasons I kind of stick around where I am. So I saw this hotel and it looked like it needed some love. And this one, I just called the hotel to see if I could figure out who the owner was. Well, I called and the actual owner answered it. And I said, would you be willing to sell? And he was like, I don't know, maybe. I'm not really sure. I'm really into a couple things. Can you holler back at me in like a couple weeks? So like, okay, put it down on my calendar. I'm going to call him back in a couple weeks. Called him back. Hey, did you think about a price to sell it for? Are you ready to sell? Let me think about it some more. I'm really, I'm busy, blah, blah, blah. So I just kind of kept doing that. I think that went on for a couple months. Out of the blue, I got a call from the owner. He's like, all right, I've got my number. I'm ready to sell. I'll tell you right now, I'm not going to change my number on this. And I'll sell it for this. If not, I'll keep it because I've finally figured out how to make money on it. I'm like, okay, what's your number? So he tells me, and he wanted to sell it for 325,000. I had done the numbers before on what I wanted to do with it and what I thought could make it cash flow. And this number was great for me. It was right in the perfect range. So I didn't want to insult him. We had built a relationship. I had gone and viewed the property before. He's an investor too, have a lot of respect for him. So I wanted him to get out what he wanted, and it was still a good deal for me. So we went with the 325. This is another one of those deals that I talked about. I actually bought this 1 month apart from the one that I spoke about on the Real Estate Investing School
Oh,
Real Deal
wow.
podcast. And I talked about in that podcast that I didn't have any money. Same deal on this property. I actually wanted to use creative financing because I don't want to use my own money, but also we didn't have a ton of money as well. So this one we actually got a partner on, my mom. She told me we had done a flip before and she was like, if you want to do something again, let me know. And she's really the money part and I do all the work part. So we actually put this one in her name only on the mortgage. And then I asked the seller if he would do any sort of seller financing. And he said he can't do the whole thing, but he could do up to around $100,000. So then we just said, okay, can you just seller finance the down payment? And he agreed to that.
Nice. Um, how do you, and this is a thing, even me, again, I'm going to have some selfish questions on here because I'm trying to learn all this too, but, how do you even approach someone on seller financing? And is it just one of those things where you probably get laughed at and turned down a few times before you learn
Oh,
like
yeah.
the lingo? I mean, is that just how you do it?
I mean, I kind of make it sound easy because I'll talk about deals that I've done, but it's not. I mean, I ask, even on houses that are on the market, I ask if someone will sell or finance every single time. And I get told no. Oh my gosh. I would say 90% of the time I get told no. It's a little different when you're working with other investors. So most of the time when you're asking somebody on a single family home, I would say most of the time they're saying no. But when you've got somebody that says, I don't need to sell it, you've got kind of or they bought it at a discount. You've got some wiggle room there where you think, okay, maybe I could ask them about it. And usually someone that's in investing, they've heard of seller financing. So you don't have to do a lot of educating there. So it's a
Got
little bit
you.
better if you're doing something that's multifamily or, hotel or mobile home park where people, they know those terms. And then the other part is you just have to get to know them and respect what they want. So you have to know what terms work for them. You have to be willing to be a little bit flexible on the terms. There are certain things that you can't be flexible on to hit your numbers, but the other ones you can be. So we asked him to to do the seller finance, and he said, okay. So we did the down payment, and we put it on I think it's 20-year amortization schedule. I think that's what it was, at a 4% interest rate. And we put this business plan in up front that in 2 years we're going to refinance or sell. At that point, we were looking more at refinance, and probably still will do that, but the interest rates were a lot lower then. So we
Right.
were definitely like, all right, refinance 100%. But we also knew as a third exit strategy, or sorry, we could Airbnb it, we could put in long-term rentals, or we could just sell it. So we bought it under market. So we knew at the end of the day, we could sell it and not lose money or make money. So it was like 100%, we're going to go forward with this.
Got you. So did you guys do a 30-year traditional? I mean, how do you do that? How did you finance the rest of it? Was it just through a bank, or how'd you do that?
Yeah, we use our local bank.
Okay.
And I will tell you, they called me and they were like, you're not putting any money of your own down. Like, you don't have any skin in the game. Why
And
would we do this?
and
You know?
us, you're like popping bottles. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what I was
And I'm
trying
like,
to do.
I worked hard to do that. I worked hard to not put any money down. And I just told him, I said, that's the point.
Yeah.
We're investors. We don't want to put our own money down, but I still owe him that money. I still have a note to pay him that money. And at the end of the day, this is our name, our reputation. We don't want to foreclose on the property. Like, we still own the property, and that's still in our name. We still owe the mortgage. So I think they ended up doing like a guarantee on maybe our personal finances or something like that, which we're fine with. We were fine with that, but it was actually able to get on the deed, but I wasn't on the mortgage.
Nice. So your mom's on the mortgage, you're on the deed with her.
Yep.
Nice.
And she was able, I think she used to secure the loan for the bank, because they don't like doing that. Even though they do have a down payment from the seller, they want you to have some skin in the game. So I think my mom's home is on there or something, but that's a whole nother story. Actually, she bought a house at a really low price, and she has a ton of equity in it. So she's like, but we didn't put any money down. I mean, the money that we used to renovate, we used, her HELOC. So neither one of us put any money down on this deal either.
So it's like her house is collateral on the loan, and then you HELOC'd from her house for the renovation money.
Yep.
That's awesome. I mean, that's when I heard about HELOCs, I was like, wait, what? Because in I'm sure you're familiar with it, but like in St. George over the last few years, I mean, really since my lifetime, but especially in the last few years around COVID and right before and after COVID, home prices went crazy. And so anyone that had a home before that, I mean, even our house, we built it in 2020. And I mean, we had almost doubled the equity than what, I mean, we were 640 into our home, land. I mean, everything at the end is what we closed up for our long-term mortgage. And I think they valued it at 975, and that's with one room in the basement done.
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, and we've even done more. We're pretty much carpet away from having the basement done now. And so I'm like, I mean, and that's just home values going nuts. I mean, that's not like some magic wand I waved when we did our house. So then I thought like, man, okay, we've got this much basically in a revolving, I mean, how would you explain that the best way? A revolving credit card, basically, that we can use to do it. Now, ask me in a few years, I thought it was smart, but now I'm starting to question myself. We put all of that into one property. So I'm still trying to figure it out if that was the right way to do it or not. But to be able to access that, I mean, I've told people like, you should just go do it regardless if you use it or not. Like, why not have those funds available for you? You know what I mean? Like, something bad happens and you need 10, 20 grand. That's sitting in your house and you have zero access to it. Well, you can go do a HELOC on it, and it just gives you access to the equity, right? So I mean, I think
you had to go buy a property that was, I mean, where I am in the Midwest, in Kentucky, you can buy a house here, a fixer upper for $60,000 cash, put some money in it and sell it. So like, if in that scenario, if you had that in your HELOC open, you'd want to, that's something you can get back quick. I don't advise people to like buy another home long term forever with their HELOC because I like to put that money back. You know, you don't want to have to spend that money if you don't want to and pay interest on it forever. But if you can make a deal happen really quick or put a down payment on something and then refinance in a year and pay
Yeah.
that money back, it's definitely a great option.
I mean, that's kind of our goal is probably 2 year mark. We'll see where we're at, but we'll probably refinance then anyway, pull money back out, move into something
Yep.
else. And it was funny. I don't know why this story just popped in my head, but our rate on that home that we bought in California is 7.25. And that was on a, gosh, the term's slipping my mind. DSCR.
Yes, CR. Yeah.
And so that was on one of those loans that it was a higher interest rate because we didn't have anyone's like income backing it. And when the lady came over, that was like the mobile notary paper person, they came over and we signed all the paperwork, and she is explaining it each page to us. Right. And then she's like, okay, this is the purchase price. This is the interest rate. And she like stops and like spins it back around to herself. And she's like, do you know this is 7% interest? And at the time, interest was like 4.5, 5.
Yeah.
And so I was like, yeah, I'm aware. And she's like, that's really high. And I was like, okay. And I was like, well, dude, it's an income property. Like, we're going to cash flow the property anyway, so it doesn't matter. Like,
Yeah, I'm not paying that interest. Someone else is.
it just made me laugh. I was just thinking like, okay, I think we're in different headspaces here. And so I was like, no, we're good. Well, now if you went and bought a house right now, what are you at? 7%?
Maybe more.
Yeah. And so we did all of that. And again, it's just a chance thing. It's not like we did anything special, but we're in the same interest rate off of that loan where we didn't have to prove income that anyone would be buying a home right now anyway, at best.
Yeah.
So it was just kind of interesting.
I mean,
to
I
me.
didn't think we would be here, but
Well,
I think we're going to be here for a while.
I think it also goes back to, and sorry, I'm not hijacking your story. We'll go back to it.
Oh, you're fine.
I think it's also the same point of like, don't let the interest rate stop you from doing it. Right. And that's what I'd heard my whole life. It's either, and it's funny because it's usually is one or the other. Like property prices are so high, purchase prices are so high, or interest is so high. Yeah. It's like, okay, well now I'd been 7 years of not buying anything because I'd been told all of these, horror stories. Yeah. And then that's when Amanda and I finally just told her like, dude, we're done. Like, we're going to find a piece of property and we're buying it. Like, I'm getting this ball rolling. And luckily for us, we did it at a great time. We still had the low interest rates, and then we got all of the equity with the housing market going nuts. But anyway, sorry, I digress. Let me go back to what
I get you though. I think you just need to be cautious. If you have, like I talked about a minute ago, if you have 3 exit strategies, then you'll be all right. Just pull the trigger. If you've got 1 exit strategy and you're really throwing in all your chips, and it may cost you and you're in a really bad financial situation and it causes a lot of stress, then, maybe not do that. But most of the time you can kind of figure out a way to find a good deal where you can still take that risk.
Well, yeah. And maybe think about this, and I'll bring it up later, give you a chance to think about it, but like your stress tolerance, right? Mm-hmm. Like I think that hopefully that needle's always going up, but I think that helped me a lot getting into the real estate I'm still struggling with it, right? Like, but it's pushing that needle up and up and up and up. So I'll ask you about that in a little bit, maybe give you some time to think of something to kind of pull that subject. But
okay.
Anyway, let me go back to the hotel, 10 doors. So you've got it financed. Now what?
So we got it financed. We closed on it. We inherited a lot of tenants, and I don't know if you would even say tenants, because it was people who needed a place to stay, but they didn't have background checks completed. They were on a week-to-week rental. So they were staying there, at least 3 or 4 months, but it was on a week-to-week. It wasn't set up with automatic, payment coming out. There was none of that going on. And I remember the first week I showed up and was kind of doing a little bit of stuff in the office, and the tenants there or guests that were staying there, they would literally walk up to me and hand me cash. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like I felt like I was doing something wrong.
There's a drug deal
And
going
then
down
I was
at the
like,
hotel.
making it rain with the cash. Like, look at this, honey. I've got like, 4 grand in cash in my hand. But it was, that was, when I say it was messy, it was messy. Like we had, I'll just tell some kind of horror stories, but we had one man who paid us like the first month, and then he had some issues, don't want to talk about him a lot, but then he wasn't paying, and there was no light at the end of the tunnel. So we actually had to call the cops and have him removed because he wouldn't pay. And then his wife also, we had like a domestic dispute where the cops were called down there. I'm very close with the sheriff. We work very well with our community. We're very open with them. They also had to go down there, and while they were looking for another person, they did checks in all the rooms, and another person was actually selling meth out of the hotel room. The hotel room was spotless. There was no signs of anything else in there. He was just dealing it out of his room, had no idea. Wasn't making meth in there, just selling it very nonchalant. Like you would not have known his room was spotless. You just would have had no idea. And then we've got wonderful tenants in there that are still in there, and they have, they've got children, and that's their home, and they really care about it, and they take care of it. And so there was just a lot of that. So that we had to evict people. We had to find different tenants. We've had people that we've tried to help out because this is a in-between kind of place, an affordable living spot where we want to offer people a place when they're in, the in-between times of finding a permanent rental or a home, or maybe they're struggling, or maybe they're having a hard time with their spouse and they need somewhere to stay for a little while. It's kind of just that respite to people. And so we wanted to make it really nice where they felt proud to live there. So there was a lot, and there still is this transition phase that we're going through where we're providing a home for people to stay in instead of just this place that the cops were getting called out to all the time.
Yes. I mean, it sounds like that's important to you because you'd mentioned before we need places for people to live and jobs, right? And so
Yes.
it's cool that like your heart's not only at we have to pull, enough money or income off of this property to be profitable. Because most people, or maybe I shouldn't say most people, I'm not as versed as you, so you can correct me, but I would think most investors don't invest in stuff like that because it becomes a job trying to collect money. Is that accurate, or what do you think?
Yeah, I think people probably would have done it a different way. Maybe they put in a ton of money and make it into like a boutique hotel and make it really into a business. That's probably where I would say most investors would grab this up and do that with. But here, like I get people texting me weekly, do you have anywhere to stay? Realtors are texting me, do you have anywhere? Do you have anywhere? And it's a huge struggle. So if there's any opportunity in our town to make a long-term living spot, even if and it is, they're efficiency apartments. They're very small. There's no bedroom. It's an actual hotel room where we have put in a couch, put in a little kitchenette where they have an air fryer, coffee pot. I put it in there what I would want if I was staying there. So I'm going to Home Goods and making it look all cute and putting the curtains in there that I would use and those sort of things, because everyone deserves a nice place to live. And we are all just one step away from a struggle to where we're going to need that. Who knows? I may need that place to live. We don't know what's in store for us.
Yeah. No.
So I like to give that, but definitely, we're business people. We want to make money, of course. We just want to do it in the right way.
Sure. I like that. It's just a different, mentality of where other investors would be. I think it's not just all black and white numbers. There's a little bit of pull on your heartstrings a little bit with it too. And I'm an emotional person. So that's why it kind of read to me of, oh, you're actually out there trying to help people. It's not just about dollars, right?
It's cool in the entrepreneur phase. Like nobody starts a business just to go out and help people, or it would be a nonprofit, right?
Right.
But I think and I see this a lot in my town with a lot of people that own businesses, is you can use the way you're making money to minister to people. You can tell them about opportunities where they can go get free food. You can bring your little kid tenants something on Christmas. There's just everybody's business has some way for them to help other people. And you'll hear people go, well, I'm just in it to help people. And you're like, no, you're not. You want to make
Yeah.
money. Well, we all want to make money, but how can we make money? Because we all need to survive and help people at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Um, so the office and living area, do you guys do anything with that? Or you're renting the office to someone? Do you use the office? What do you do?
So my husband's been using the office because I told him he needs to get out of my house. We are both working at home. I'm like, we need to miss each other. So you go down to that office and work. But we want to convert. So this, when I say we're in the messy middle, we have not. So all the rooms were good to go. Like they needed furniture, maybe needed some paint. We've put basically brand new air conditioners or heaters in every one of them because they were old. But the living quarters it needs to be completely redone. And that was our phase 2 of, okay, we're going to get all these rented out. We're going to get them set up and nice where people can live in here. Phase 2 is the living quarters and the office will be converted to units as well, so that we'll have 12. And I'm actually meeting with the bank tomorrow to talk about options with that. But that's what I was talking about when I'm having a struggle. Because if I look at everything and I'm like, okay, we've had the police called, we've had people run off and us try to give them a chance and them not pay us. And we were like, no, you don't have to put a deposit down because we want to give you a shot, and then them take off and not pay us. So we're just like eating money.
Yeah.
We had we put a lot of money back into it. We have a roof that needs to be really replaced, the whole thing, but we can kind of survive the way it is now. And then we've got all these renovations. And at some point you get so stressed out where you get called and you're like, another AC is out. Okay, I got to put a new one in. We're like, let's just get rid of it. We bought it for a cheaper rate. Let's just sell it because it's a headache. But then you got to really step back. And that's where it's important to have people on your team to kind of bring you back. Like I told my property manager, I'm like, and she's a broker as well. She'll be my real estate broker. She's like, you need to fill all these rooms, take a breath. This wasn't in your plan. Let's fill these rooms. Let's get everything ready. And then we'll talk about selling. Which was really great because that wasn't my business plan. Like I have this at a lower interest rate. I think we've got it at 4.25, I believe. We can use loans. A bank will fund a construction loan to get it renovated. And I just need to go back, take some time, meet with the people that I need to meet with and execute the plan. But like you and I talked about before, is it's when you're in it and you're having a hard time, you just want to, when you're in it and you have a hard time, you just want to quit or give up or sell it.
Right. It's do you listen to Jocko Willink at all?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm actually listening to his audiobook, Extreme Ownership right now because everyone's told me to read it and I haven't read it yet. So
it's a great book. He has a little story. He talks about they were doing a training and he was one of the lower guys at the time. Like he wasn't I don't know all the ranks, but he was in charge of a lot of important people in Iraq and whatnot. But when they were just doing drills and he was one of the lower guys, we weren't really in war times. They were on a oil drill, oil derrick. Is that what they're called? Anyway, he's on like an oil structure and they're all stacked up, which means like they're all in a single file line and they kind of all had their guns out and no one was moving. No one was doing anything. And they were all just, tunnel vision down the same line of view. And he was like, what are we doing? What are we doing? What are we doing? And no one was moving. And so what he had actually did was he stepped out of the line and started looking around. And then he says, and some of this I'm paraphrasing, but he basically is like, move left. And so then everyone breaks left. And then he's like, move right. And they break right. And then he gets them out of the situation. And he's like, it wasn't even my role to do that. But what he's pulling off of that is like, hey, when you're so in deep in that and you're so focused on one thing, sometimes you got to take that sidestep and have that broader view, right? And so and you and I have had that conversation. It's like, man, when you're in it, it's hard to see. When you're in the box, it's hard to see. You got to pull yourself out of the box a little bit. But I think at the same time, the I mean the struggle's part of it, right? I mean, like I feel like that. I feel like the struggle's part of it in you kind of like I've always talked about you got to pencil in losses is how I always bring it up, but um
Yes.
like you have to be aware that there's going to be some part of I'm losing my words here, but
Challenges.
yeah, but like yeah, you need to be able to move. I don't know, Mallory, I'm totally losing what I'm trying to say here. um
There's just going to
You got to be
be
able to
hard times, is
transition.
what I'm thinking.
yeah, you need to be fluid, you need to be like able to adjust, you need to
Be
be
like water.
Adaptable.
there you go. Like you need to have some sort of that to be able to maneuver through all of it. And that's kind of the critical thinking and I think I was going to say earlier, I think that's what drew me to real estate a little bit is like I've started and run businesses. And I think it's a lot of the same tactics or lessons that I've learned I'm applying into the same thing.
Yep. They're all transferable. It's just funny, and we've chatted about this before, because you see all of these things on Instagram and YouTube, which are designed to make you click on it. So I totally get it. It's marketing, and you want that, but they're not showing you the bad,
Right.
Like I could say, oh, and I did put this on my Instagram, like because it was a big thing for me. I put converted motel into long term, just bought a hotel. Oh gosh, Emily's killing it, right?
Right.
No, I'm not. I'm not making money on this property because I'm putting the money back in for renovations, and there's a long-term plan, and we've had people not pay us, and we've had to pay for, all these expenses. So I think a lot of people are like, oh, they own property, they're rich. And it's like, no, I'm a business owner just like everybody else. And in the first 3 to 5 years, like you've got a lot of challenges you're facing with whether you're cash flowing or not.
Yeah. Yeah. You need to learn how to adapt. That's what I was trying to come up with a minute ago.
Yeah.
But so what else is there? So now that's where you guys are at right now, right? Is there any, I mean, moving forward, what's the plan? Do you know yet? Is that what you're going to talk to the bank with? And I love
Yeah.
that. I love that too, where it's like, hey, let's try and stay creative, right? Like you got creative to purchase the property. Now let's, readjust and get creative again.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got so there's a little bit of a backyard. I mean, that's another thing. I'm like, what can I do with the space in the back that we haven't done anything with? I haven't even met with the city yet on like what I can and can't do back there, but that's an option. But I mean, I really am. I'm going to meet the bank tomorrow to talk about, can we get a construction loan, and what I think it will be worth once we do that, what I think it's worth now. And that's a struggle in itself, because you've got what the appraisers think, and then if you're doing a commercial property, it's based on income. And also the big struggle I have where I live is there's not a lot of hotels just like this that are being sold, so there's not any comparables.
Yeah.
And so the risk tolerance that the bank has, or even the appraiser has, on like, I have to use these comparables, and this is what it comes up as based on these comparables. Well, there's nothing out there like the property I have, because I am in a really small town. So you really got to be an advocate for yourself too, and not give up. And the relationships are what it boils down to, is just going and talking to the people that you're working with at the bank, and having a really, they have to invest in you also, not just the property.
Yeah. So I think the big thing pulling out of this is like one start. I mean, you've got to start somewhere. I was talking to a high school class, and one of the girls was like, well, I'm only 17. I can't do any of this. And I was like, well, what are you doing? And she's like, well, what do you mean? And I said, if I gave you, if magically you were 18 right now, or your parents signed or whatever, and I gave you 60 grand to go find a property that would be profitable and buy it, what's the address of the house you're buying right now? And she was like, well, I don't understand. And I'm like, that's the point. Like, you need to pull more education. Like, yeah, save your money, do all of that. But I mean, I had the money and I didn't even know what to do with it. So like, you need to start pulling some of that education with it. And then when you're ready to start. And you said you had some sports background, that kind of drills some competitiveness into you. At least it did me. So that
Oh yeah.
that definitely helps, right? And I think it's
Yes.
funny how you and your husband compete on income. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Um, but then again, so stress tolerance. Do you have any thoughts on that? I talk about it quite a bit. My
Yeah.
wife, our New Year's goal, my wife said we need to lower our stress, and I said I think we need to up our stress tolerance. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Man, I feel like, and I don't want to say that like, if you were to talk about stress, like between me and my husband, it would be a completely different conversation because as a mom and a wife, I feel like we do things that no one even knows we're doing in terms of schedules and birthday parties and so and so has a homework and a project and then they have a dance this night and oh we're having a sleepover this night and you're coordinating all the things and then if you're a career woman as well then you've got your business and then you've got health which is huge and that's probably where I'm like the least dialed into right now which if you forward back like 10 years ago that would have been my most so I'm in different phases and all of those can provide stress. Then you've got your family issues, which everybody's got family issues. I've learned, even the people that look perfect on Facebook and Instagram. And so there's all of these things that are going on that can really get you in a really bad place quick. I think the way I build my stress tolerance has been personally my faith because I couldn't do it without it. And so even if you're not in a spiritual place, just believing in something bigger than you or higher than you, and not trying to control everything, I think that can build up your stress tolerance. But on the flip side, like when you are a very driven person, you keep trying to add things. So a recent story that I've had is I tried to take on this job, and it was definitely a job where you're trading time for money because I was good at it, and it could give our family a lot more money. Well, after a month, I realized the reason I quit my job, the reason I got into real estate was to be with my family more and was to be less stressed out. And then I was up to that stress level again. And it was probably more responsibility than I've had before. So it wasn't like it was just an extremely stressful situation. But for my life, I wasn't getting out of it what I had designed. I had designed my life to do things where I have a flexible schedule, to take my kids where I wanted to pick them up, to spend time with them. And now I'm doing this job trading money again. And I was right back where I was. So I think you just have to set boundaries and then check in on your stress level, even monthly.
Yeah, I've got a couple things I want to get to, and then we can shift gears into quitting the rat race. I think
Okay.
there's something you want to talk about with that, right? Like, am I dreaming that or?
Yes, I'm like,
Okay.
it's like my big thing.
Okay, that's
I
what I
could shout
thought.
it to the rooftops.
So something that people ask me a lot, and I wouldn't even consider myself a real estate investor. Like I'm trying to be, but I'm not even sure I'm there yet.
You're not giving yourself enough credit.
Well, like I said, ask me in a couple years and I'll tell you. Maybe it's because I don't view myself as a successful real estate person because I
I think
don't have
it's
enough
because
time
you
in.
need to meet with your coach more.
I know. I thought about that today. So she has an open schedule, or you have. I guess I'm talking to the audience now. So like Emily has an open schedule to do coaching calls. And I'm like, okay, I'll pull something next month. And we did it one time, and I think it took me a couple months to even really. And I was right in the middle of the California property when I
Yeah,
signed up,
you are.
and so I mean, if I wasn't driving somewhere, I was working or I was sleeping. That was it for 3 months, and so I finally was home for a weekend, I think, or a couple days, and got on the phone call with you, got on Zoom with you, and I haven't done it since. So. And
Calling you out
it's
live
not
here,
you.
just so
It's
you'll
not
have to
you.
do it.
I think for me, it's more of like, I want something meat and potatoes to talk to you about more
That's
than
my job.
I know, but
Show up.
I think that's my issue with it is I'm like, okay, well, I just don't have anything to bring up. But I think more, and I'm realizing this right now, the more we've talked today, that like it would be extremely beneficial for me just to get on a phone call and talk with you, and
Yep.
it doesn't have to be like So there's a 3-2 over on Madison Avenue that I want to, like, I don't even think
Yep.
it's that. I think I just need more positive reinforcement of everything else.
Yep. The accountability.
So I'll be on record right now and say I'll be better at doing that. Is that fair?
Okay. Yes.
Okay. So when you were talking, and I've heard you talk before about your other deal, and then this one was both from an investor, right? So they kind of had that background knowledge of investing, real estate investing, expenses, income, trying to make money, cash flow, right? Do you think that's easier or harder to walk an investor through purchasing a property from them?
Easier.
Easier. Okay.
A lot easier. Yeah. Because when a person's selling their individual, like their home, it's really emotional. They've lived there or their grandparents owned it. Their child was born in it. And most of the time people are going from one house to another. So they need that money to go to the next. And they're stressed and they're showing their home every day and cleaning it. And it's, that's kind of a stressful situation. So they just want, and they're most of the time using a real estate agent. So they want, and they need help. They need someone else to do that for them. So when I do talk to an investor, it is a lot easier. I actually target properties, even single family homes. I will target ones that I know they are owners of multiple properties because they've done it before. And most of the time I'm not going to insult them, or if I give them a low offer. And I always show, like, if I give them an offer less than what they want, I tell them why and I show them why. And usually that's an easier conversation because they get it. They've been a landlord before.
Yeah, no, it totally makes sense. And you do more, or maybe not more, but you've done commercial deals. And like, I haven't even really looked at that yet. So it's like most people that have commercial deals most likely are investors, I would imagine.
Yeah. And you can get more creative on them. Like I love the commercial space because you can get really creative with it, and you can bring in, potential income versus what's in there now. And you can show what you're going to do to the property or how you're going to change it. There's just lots of different things you can do with it.
Yeah. My next question is the one I get the most. And I'm more like, when I have a few minutes, I'll break out Zillow and I'll just search an area, and then I start plugging it into the calculators and the numbers and AirDNA and PropStream and just start going through everything, right? And it's more just so I can have the repetition. And so I've done that a lot, but it's funny when I find a property and I've got buddies that I'm like trying to like tug of war pull along with me, that I'm like, dude, you need to get into this space. You need to get into this space. And the number one question is always, and it's what you just went through with this hotel. Well, if they're making money, why would they sell it? I mean, what do you say to people that say that? It's like, this guy said, I finally figured out how to make money, but he still sold it. So where does that come from?
So a couple things. One of them is when we'll use the mobile home park that I talked about on the real estate investing podcast. Just to give a brief overview, I got seller financing on that. The best part about that for them is, if you look at the income, sometimes they will either get close to what they're already making or more by being the bank instead of the owner. So they go from being a landlord where they're actually personally getting the calls because they didn't have a property manager because they've owned it forever and they've managed it themselves forever. So they're going from getting calls, collecting rent, chasing down people, calling the maintenance man, mowing their own lawn, all of that, and they're getting a certain amount of money each month, to, hey, will you sell this to me? And instead of me paying the bank a mortgage each month, I'm going to pay you that each month. And they're going to make that money. So they move from being the landlord to a lender. They're getting almost the same amount of money or more to do nothing. And then I'm taking over the property. I was going to pay that money to the bank anyway. Let me pay it to you instead. We're both making money.
Well, I think that's that conversation and building your team and everything that you've talked about. It's like having that relationship with them that you can have that conversation. So, I mean, that's usually, I tell people, I'm like, dude, I don't know, but it's not my question to ask. Like, they're selling it. And like your stuff, we're talking about people that are off market and you're finding them, right? Like, I'm like, well, it's on Zillow. I don't know why. I don't care why. All I know is it makes money,
Yep.
The next thing is kind of fear-based, right? The other thing that I've heard a lot of trying to get into like a long-term rental is what happens if you have unexpected expenses or nobody pays. And so
Right.
it's like, yeah, that's a possibility. And so, I mean,
Well,
what's your thought on that? Because it sounds like you were going through it.
yeah, a couple of things. I have a wonderful property manager. She is a rock star and she's done it for a long time and she has over 400 units. So she
Wow.
knows the eviction process. She knows what to do. She knows when to give someone empathy and a little bit more time to pay. We don't always just evict people if they don't pay. People, some people have a bad month. So she has that behavioral part where she can kind of see when someone's not going to pay or if they are. And so she knows the eviction process. She handles that. But if I were to do that on my own, let's say I find a property and I want to manage it for a while, you can meet with an attorney in your state and figure out what that process is. And really, it's not that bad. Now there is going to be an opportunity where like we're probably going to have to go to court on somebody coming up soon, but it's just part of the business. I mean, the reward of 95% of the tenants being awesome and paying on time, you're going to have we talked about, you're going to have problems. Like you're going to have those tenants that do that. It is a pain in the butt, especially if you're doing it by yourself. It's a pain in the butt. I highly recommend a property manager, but if you've had to do it by yourself, it really is. When people are fearful, it's because they're not prepared. So go to your attorney, go to another property manager, look online and say, okay, if someone doesn't pay, what steps do I need to take? How many months is it actually going to take for them to get out? How much money is that in holding costs? And then I will tell you, and I'll be completely honest, on my properties, I made a huge mistake on not having enough reserves. I'm very like, okay, I'll set it up conservatively where I'll really get a good deal. I'm great at that, where they say you make your money on the deal. But I was not great at estimating cost on a value add property. Now I bought a property in December, and we haven't had any maintenance on it. It's a newer property. And when I say new, it was built in the 2000s. If you buy something that was less than that, you're going to have a lot of maintenance. And I was very much into value add because I knew I could refinance and get my money back on that. But with those value adds, you have to have reserves. So you really need to put in a lot of amount in your bank account in case something happens, or have a business line of credit. If it is a commercial property, it's a business. It is. If you have a resort or a mobile home park or a hotel, that is a business, even if it's long-term renters. So you can get a business line of credit. You can get a credit card as well. So I highly recommend just having enough money up front. And you can get that from, if you're partnering on a deal with somebody, instead of asking them, okay, we want you to put in 30 grand for the down payment, ask for 50 grand and put that other 20 in the bank in case something happens. If nothing happens, then you've got that money just sitting there. But it's better to do that than be scrambling, where a lot of investors are using their own money. I mean, I've done it before where I'm like, okay, CPA, we're doing another shareholder loan, which just means I'm using my own money because I didn't put enough reserves in. So that's a huge one, is just be prepared.
Yeah, that's my number one thing from this California property. We ended up having to put 5% more down like 2 days before we closed.
Okay.
They marked it, I think I might have told you this, they marked it as a declining market, like the appraiser did. And I'm like, yeah, USA is declining. Like, what does that even mean? Like, and so I ended up having to put 5% more down, which was like some of my rehab money and my paying a contractor money and all of that. So, and then we ended up rehabbing, 90% of the property instead of just painting, is what I thought when I was going into it. So
yeah, it's always more. It's every time it's more money. Even if you're like, I'm going to put 10% reserves down, you need more than that. I mean, every time. It's just crazy.
Well, and your hotel will be the same, but like for the Airbnb, I would definitely, and I was even told this with Vodacy that I'm a part of, to be able to furnish the rooms and everything. Like they said, this is the budget you need. And I was like, yeah, we could probably do it for cheaper. And so
I'll be like 30 grand. You're like, 30 grand. That's crazy.
Yeah. Well, it's
going to be 30 grand.
That's exactly, I mean, it got me in trouble on furnishing it for sure. And a little side business my mom and I run is like a liquidation business.
Okay.
So we're buying and selling big box store products. And so we were even able to furnish, I think, everything but like a mattress off of that. I mean, I bought it through
Wow.
that business. So it even saved me money, and we still overspent like of what I thought it was going to be. So yeah, I think hammering home having the reserves is a big part of it. Right. And another thing that I can't remember, it was probably, I can't remember who was talking about it. It might've been Brody, might've been, anyway, someone had mentioned like they didn't know how much money to put down, and people would just put like an even number. Oh, it's 30 grand. I don't know why. I just
No.
put 30. And it's like, and that's what people get in trouble with is, oh, I'm going to lower my payment. It's like, no. Hold that money, especially if you're doing it as an investment, to have those reserves, right?
Yep.
So there's ways you can build the reserves up, or maybe, again, lesson to myself too, maybe step down the cost of your property you're trying to build and hold more reserves, right?
Yep.
And then build a team. I mean, we've hammered that, I think, a few times. So you have your property manager that runs all of that, and then get educated, right? Like you were saying, there's other ways to do it. There's know what you're getting into.
And don't get down on yourself during the education process. I've got a lot of students and they come in month one, they've never owned a property, and they're like, I want to buy 5 properties this year. I'm like, okay, we can do that. And I have had a student that has done that. But there is a lot that goes into learning, which is mindset's one of them, learning different things, learning the lending process, finding your right team, finding your right market. And a lot of people get discouraged because they want something immediately, or they bought something. Maybe they did buy something the first month that we did coaching, and then they're wanting to scale. And I'm like, we can do this and scale, but when you scale really fast, you also can't stabilize like you should when you're doing stuff step by step, and can cause you issues. Like I had that issue when I had 3 flips going on at one time, and we bought this resort. I had no idea what I was doing. And so what I really try to tell people, not to slow them down, is just to like celebrate your little wins. And sometimes just educating is getting into real estate investing, because you can't do it all in one, in just 1 month. Like slow down, take the time to learn things, network, meet people, find your team, all the things we've talked about. And like, just don't put too much pressure on yourself.
Yeah. My goal at the beginning of the year was 2 rentals a year. It was kind of, and to be honest, I did that. It's kind of more of like a Grant Cardone 10X type thing. Like if I had 1, I would be thrilled.
Yeah.
So I put 2 because I was like, I need to be doing the work to be able to get 2 so I can make sure I get 1, right? So that was like my mindset going into it. And now we're halfway through the year and I'm still treading water on my last year's property. So I'm like, all right, I need
that's the real. Like sometimes you need to stabilize.
Yeah, I think that's the reality of it though, right? Like that kind of brings me back to, it grounds me a little bit. My favorite part of, even like I said, I'm always just clicking through stuff and trying to see what properties would work at what, how much does this area rent for and what's the purchase prices there. But really, like what I love getting into is being creative on the lending.
Oh yeah.
Like
That's
anytime,
the fun part.
I think so too. Like I don't like staging properties. I don't like buying all of the, all the furnishings for the house. And it's 2 houses out in California. So we had to furnish 2 houses. Man, I couldn't care less about that. Like I actually,
did your wife like that part?
Not really. Like we're both like, if you walked through our house, there's not one thing hanging on a wall. Like we have like bookshelves by the TV in the front room, and we have stuff on those. That's about it. And so like, that's just not our wheelhouse. I actually paid, again, through Vodacy, they have kind of their like preferred decorator, interior designer. Cool. His name's Mike Whitfield. We're actually trying to line up a day for him to come on the podcast too. He's in Dallas, Texas. And, I paid him because I was like, dude, this is not my wheelhouse. Like I can get creative. I can find money if we need money. I can do all of that, but this part of it, I know nothing. And so he actually helped a ton with us. But yeah, going back, being a part of the real estate investing school, and we're kind of hammering that just because that's kind of our relationship started. But having Jason around, Jason Griffiths, right?
Oh yeah, he's
And
awesome.
like,
Jason Griffin. Yeah.
is it Griffin?
Griffin. Yeah.
Oh, Griffin. Okay, sorry, Jason. But having him and like the live event that we did, I went and sat in with his room because I'm like, what do I not know? Like, this is the part that really interests me, and how do you get creative on all this? But I don't know. I like clicking through Zillow. I like running numbers, and that's kind of my background anyway. I've always been a math guy, a numbers guy, and then figuring out, and it's crazy how many ways you can finance something. And
Oh yeah.
I'm not even sure
It's
that
wild.
anyone knows all of them. Like there's that many ways to do it. All right, I'm going to kind of turn it over to you. Let's talk about quitting the 9 to 5, quitting the rat race, and then maybe we'll see if you have questions for me, and then we'll just wrap it up. So
Yeah, I just want,
take as
I
much
guess
time
if
as you
I could
need.
just do anything, and this is, I really think about women most of the time, but men too, is most people are going to work 9 to 5 and they hate their job and they're stressed and they bring their stress home with them, and it's just terrible. And I really just want to get people to start thinking a little bit differently. And I'll give an example of a friend of mine, and it's not a woman, but I could talk about women in general dealing with being away from their kids all the time. But I had a friend who hated his job. And so I said, okay, how much do you make? How much do you bring home each week? And plugged it into Excel spreadsheet. And I said, okay, for a landscaping business, you could mow this many lawns, and if you did this many lawns during the summer only, so it would be here, you get your lawn mowed anywhere from like April to October. And if you had this many clients, it could replace that job. You wouldn't be at a desk job. You can, and I kind of talked about this at the summit when I was speaking on how to quit your W-2 job, but also said, okay, you can also go drive a bus at our school. They really need bus drivers. You drive for an hour in the morning and an hour in the afternoon, and you get insurance through a part-time job through the state. And I just gave it to him, and I was like, here you go. Like, here's your life plan. Here's your plan. And he was like, no, I can't do that. And I just want to be like, why not? Like we talked about the stress. You could get on a lawnmower and really enjoy your day, be out in nature, have your own business, have a ton of tax write-offs for that, have a flexible schedule, be off half the year, and get insurance, and a very low stress job, probably making more than what you make in your corporate job, giving your W-2 taxes away. And I just think a lot of people get stuck in this place of like, I have to work here, or I can't leave here. And there are so many options out there, like for women, cleaning. And I know it's not like glorified. People may not want to clean, but they could eventually own their own cleaning business. But like, I pay our cleaner $20 an hour. That's more than some people where I live are making at a desk job, where they're not being able to write off their expenses or their mileage or their phone or any of that. And then they hate their job and they're working more than 40 hours a week because they're on salary. And I want to just shout it from the rooftops to everybody. There's another way where you can either work a 4-day work week if you're a nurse, or anywhere, or work a part-time job and then do something that you like with the rest of the 20 hours, where you can supplement that income, or take a look at your budget. And we talked about, it's not about the money you make, but it's about the money you keep, and make those adjustments to live the life that you want to live, where you're not stressed and you can see your family. And I'm happy to talk to any women about that, just as a friend, or give some pointers to people, because our life's short. Like we talked about before, like what's important in our lives is our family. And if you're spending all this time away from them and they don't know you and you don't know them, like what's it for? And so that's what I want to kind of bring up is, and you have that experience too. You're a business owner, so you kind of have that flexibility too of just what life's really about. And it's not about clocking in and clocking out.
Yeah, I mean, I did that for a while. I worked at the post office. Now I have contracts out of the post office, so I hire them out. Right now, I'm out there like 3 days a week carrying mail on that. I don't know. Like when people ask me what I do for work, I just tell them I'm a drug dealer because it's easy. I either tell them I'm a drug dealer or I have a YouTube channel I'm hoping is going to take off because then people don't ever ask you questions. Because I have like 4 small businesses, right?
Yeah.
So it's just easier to explain. But so on this business, I'm out there and I talk to all those people at the post office, and it's like you did it, right? So like people are like, oh, that'd be too hard, whatever your excuse is. It's like, well,
Yeah.
Emily did it. And like, I mean, I like you, Emily, but do you think that you're like this extravagant, special person?
No, I'm old. Like I am just a person growing up that like we didn't have a lot of money. I'm from a small town. There's nothing special about me. I don't have any special talents I'm just your average Joe, just like everyone else. And that's kind of what I want to share this when I think about I'm reading this book now, and it's about what God's dream for you is. And one of the things, like, I have these experiences that I've had with working and quitting my job. And for a long time, I didn't want to talk about it because I don't like a lot of attention on myself in that way, or I feel like I'm bragging, like, oh, it must be nice. You get to be at home with your kids. But now I'm more talking about it to be like, you can do this too.
Right.
I've done this. I can help you. I can help you budget. I can talk to you about, the risks and the stresses of what it takes to move cities, and that you can do it, and changing schools with your kids. And I've had kids that have behavioral issues where we've struggled with that. And I realize that I've gone through these experiences so I can share it with some other woman that's having this same issue. And like you just said, if you can do it, you're just a regular person. Like I can do it too.
Yeah. And obviously, I think the world of you. So I'm not trying to put you down and say you're just a normal person.
I am not of any importance. And I like it that way. Like I don't want to be, that's what makes it more real. That lets people know that they can do the same thing.
Well, and that's the conversation I had. And the other day there's a lot of banter there, right? So we're all just kind of talking back and forth when we're sorting our routes. And one of the guys was like, I don't even know why Derek's here with all of his money. And like, don't get me wrong, Amanda and I are paycheck to paycheck. And sometimes we're not even that, so like we're not that person, but that's whatever the personality that everyone throws on me out there.
Yes.
And so I told him, I was like, you know what? You guys could have done it too. Like I worked here. I had your guys' job. And, I said, I love to come back to my humble beginnings. and one of the guys was like, your humble beginnings is our career. And I was like, yeah, but that's because you choose that, and I get there's other circumstances. I always credit my wife. I mean, she's got a stable job. She worked her butt off getting through school. She has a master's degree. She works her butt off at her job. I mean, she loves it, luckily. And like when you were talking earlier, people that hate their job, I just say, well, yeah, that's why they don't call it fun. That's why it's called a job, right? But she actually, she went to school specifically to get the job she has. So I can take a lot more risk because of that. Like you said, you could drive a bus because that's where you'll gain your insurance. So don't tell me I have insurance at my job. That's why I don't leave. And like, I have never had to deal with that because Amanda carries the insurance. So sure, if someone wants to be like, must be nice, I'll take some of that because of the wife I have. But at the same time, she's worked her trash off getting through school. I've taken a lot of risks I know people wouldn't take because they tell me I'm nuts. But that's all part of it. That's all part of the game. And that was all part of our plan. I mean, Amanda and I planned this out 11 years ago, right? And so we're 11 years into our plan right now. And, but it all takes that risk. Like you're saying, if you're not willing to jump in and do it, cool, man. And I've got a buddy at the post office that he loves. Well, I don't know if he loves the post office, but he loves like what he calls his simple life, right? Like his house is paid off. He's got, I believe his cars are paid off. He goes to work.
That's the dream right there.
And then he goes and hikes, and a couple of his kids are old enough to be out of the house now. And he looks at me and he's like, I don't know how you do it. And I'm like, well, we're 2 different people, man. Like, I just want different things than you do. And that's fine.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if you hate your job and you're coming to talk to me about it, let's do something. Let's put a plan down.
Yeah, if you love your job, stay in your job. Like that's the point. Like, you want a life that you love. I have a friend that she's like, I don't want to be at home with my kids. Not that she doesn't want to be with her kids, but she's like, I love my career. I like what I'm doing. I don't care to work 50 hours a week because she loves it. Then keep doing it. I'm not on here telling everybody you shouldn't have a W-2 job.
Right.
I'm just saying you should do something and enjoy your life and have something meaningful and have your kids know you or your mom or your sister or whatever it is. And there's a way to do it. You just haven't figured it out yet.
And say, but guess what? You can also take some of that income and like right now, like I said, we're paycheck to paycheck. Well, I don't plan to always be that way,
Yeah.
And so like we're kind of paying those dues now is the way we see it to, and William, we only have one kid. He's 2 years old. He's almost 3. And it's like, hey, I'm paying these things now. Luckily, with the job that I have with running my own businesses, I can kind of like when you were talking about both of us having, 9 to 5 jobs. And if a kid gets sick, we can't stay home like that, that'd tear me in half.
Yeah.
And luckily, most of the time I'm in the situation where I could go grab him and go home if I needed to. But again, it's taken me 15 years to get to this point. So I think that's, and I was actually talking to my producers, Mallory and Blake, just barely, and people expect to see results way too soon.
Yep.
I think that's the world we're in today. Social media, Amazon, 1-day shipping, right? Like everyone wants results today, and they get 2-3 months into something and it's not what they had planned and they don't know how to adjust and they just punt. And like we had said, you've thought and talked about selling the hotel. I think about punting on California all the time. So it's not that those thoughts don't go through, but it's, having some resolve and sticking to it.
Yep. Absolutely.
Is that fair?
Oh yeah.
Okay. What else you got? I think we're about at the time I told you I'd be done. So I can sit here and talk to you all day, but I don't want to, I want to be respectful to your time too.
No, I don't have anything at all. I'm just, hope that this was helpful to somebody out there that's kind of thinking about making the move, and then they just take that leap. It's worth it. And like my mom said, when I was quitting my job, she's like, well, if it doesn't work out, you can move back here and get a different job. Like,
yeah,
just give it a go.
Yeah. I think last year we had an episode kind of on that, and it slightly went viral because people was calling bullshit on it. But I was like, hey, if you're wanting to go take a risk and do your own business or do your own thing, now's the time. I'm like, because if it doesn't work, at least in St. George, I'm like, you can go to Arby's and make, $15, $14, $15, $16 an hour being an Arby's employee. So like, if there's a time to take a risk, it's now. But I think no matter what, it's now, right? Like we talked about interest rates. We talked about whatever that scary risk thing is, there's people doing it. And in our group, in the real estate investing school, there's people buying houses now. And if you just went and talked to like the average Joe, I think they'd be like, oh, the interest rates, oh, this, oh, that, oh, the, home prices are going to drop 20% in the next year. Everyone's like predictions. And I don't know. I, in my life, I'm like, just do it, just start, just go.
I've had 3, so I have one-on-ones with each of my students. I've had 3 students this month, either under contract or closed this month.
Yeah.
And they're making money. So
yeah. I was telling a buddy that the other day. He's like, I was showing him some houses and some properties that would cash flow that were not in Southern Utah. Like, a couple were in Georgia. Anyway, I was telling him like, dude, these purchase prices are so low that you can actually cash flow it like day one, and they have tenants in place. And that was his first thing is, why would they sell it? And I'm like, I don't know, dude, maybe they're going to buy a 15-unit apartment. I don't know. And they're selling their $200,000 house. I don't know.
They're
it's
on
not
a
my
different
problem.
journey.
Yeah. And then the next thing is like, well, dude, interest rates. And I'm like, you got to understand, man, people that are in the real estate investing space, they're still buying stuff. Like I kind of mentioned my mentor earlier, he splits time in Southern Utah, and he was here. I rode around with him for the day. I just asked him if his passenger seat was open. And so he actually came and picked me up, and we went and looked at 3 different properties and he bought 2 of them that day. And
Nice.
so I'm like, it's happening. People are still buying things. And I don't know. I wouldn't consider myself an expert. Maybe we need Jason on to talk a little more about this. But like you're saying, have some exit strategies. But if your interest rate is what scares you, like, dude, tread water for a couple years and refinance it. Like my joke is once we get a Republican back in, we'll just refinance everything. And so anyway, I really appreciate you making time. I really appreciate you coming on. I feel weird because I'm like staring at nobody right now. Like I know you're over here. But anyway, I love talking to you. I know I need to do some one-on-ones more, and I need to really just get on with someone that's on your level to show me that these things work and it's actually possible. Because I think I get in my head too of like, man, this would be a lot easier if I just went back to, even go back to W-2, right? And Amanda and I just make
you'll
the
have
money
that
we were
thought in your
making.
head for sure.
I've had that a lot lately, but then I have 2 employees at my retail store and I leave and go pick my son up early from daycare and we go home and play trucks. And I'm like, this is why I'm doing it. So,
absolutely. Well, it's been a pleasure. I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, I'm glad we got a time. I think I moved the time once, and then you weren't able to do a day. So I'm glad we finally nailed one down. All right. That's Emily Fackler. Do you have social medias you want to throw out? If someone wants to get a hold of you, we obviously need to shout out Real Estate Investing School. That's how our connection became.
It's Emily J. Fackler at Instagram. And also, soon, if anybody wants to invest in Kentucky, I will, within the next 2 weeks, I'll be able to help list and sell any of those properties. So I love working with investors for on and off market properties. And then I love coaching. So reach out with any questions. I love talking shop, and I love talking to women also who are kind of trying to get out of the rat race. Happy to chat.
Yeah, I'm sorry. That was the first thing I wrote down was your real estate license, and I didn't even star it. So it's the one thing I didn't cover.
Oh, you're good.
And so I also want to say this because when you said that you got your real estate license, my first thought was, okay, I have a connection somewhere that's not as expensive as here that I could reach out to and trust to try and do a long-term or short-term in Kentucky.
Yeah.
So
absolutely. Let's go.
So I think that we'll definitely going to link up. I think it'd be fun to have a place out there too, where we just come for a couple weeks here and there. Anyway, episode 106, Emily, you own it. Derek Lake podcast. I know you guys are still here because this has been a real riveting episode. I know you liked it, but go ahead and share it. We're going to have a ton of clips off of this. The real estate world, I'm just diving in it. I'm trying to get 2 feet in. Like I said, ask me in 2 years and I'll tell you how successful I've been. But I've got Emily in my corner, so I know I'm going to be successful, right?
That's right.
Sorry, your TV's over here to look at you. All right, guys, episode 106. Go follow Emily. If you have any questions about the real estate investing school, you can reach out to her or me. We've had Kurt Campbell on here. He's actually, I think he still is like the onboarding coordinator. I don't know what you call it, but
he does it all. He's all of operations now.
Okay. So yeah, he would be the guy that you're calling to talk to. And the cool thing about it is he actually goes through a bunch of stuff and makes sure you're even a good fit for us. I mean, if you're not a good fit and it's not something that he feels like you can progress in or you're ready for or whatever, he has that conversation with you. So get on, talk to Kurt, my main man. He hooked me up with this hat the other day. And we love Kurt. Got to get Brody on here. Brody, get on here, man. We're going to schedule it up. Yeah, Brody started the school. That's why for people that don't know, I keep on throwing Brody out there and they're like, who the heck's Brody? So anyway, guys, thanks for being here. We'll see you guys next week.